Hello, okay. This is another old school comics review. This one is going to be another nostalgia trip. This is the Uncanny X-Men issue 186, a special double-sized issue, $1. This is a story called Life, Death, a Love Story. This is a very, very interesting issue. This was from 1986, I believe. And this was at a very unique time in the X-Men history. This is back when Storm had, she was wearing a black leather vest. She had a mohawk, and she was basically the leader of the X-Men. Well, she wasn't basically; she was the leader of the X-Men. Cyclops had married a young lady and more or less left the team. He would come in and out at various times, but that's where the X-Men were. To pick up where this story starts is at the end of the previous issue. Government agents were after the X-Men, and they caught up with Storm and Rogue, and someone shot Storm with a high-tech weapon. The weapon did not kill her, but it did take away all of her superpowers, all of her mutant powers. Forge was somebody who was with the government agents. He's yelling at them, saying, "How dare you? You've used my creation for nefarious purposes," and he takes her to his home. Um, so that's where this issue starts. Storm is depressed. She's despondent. She thinks of herself as a cripple. She doesn't want to go on anymore. She doesn't want to live anymore. And Forge basically talks her a little bit out of her depression. He tells her, there's a lot to live for. You're a beautiful woman, so on and so forth. And basically, they get to know each other. Storm has got a crush on, or I'm sorry, Forge has got a crush on Storm. And as the issue progresses, Storm starts to have feelings for him as well. Towards the end of the issue, Storm eventually realizes not only was Forge working with the government agents all along, but he designed and built the weapon that essentially took away her powers. Essentially this whole situation has been set up by him, and it's all his fault. Even if he didn't plan it this way, he's the guy to blame. She more or less tells him where to get off, and walks away with her dignity intact. There's also some subplot stuff going on with Rogue fighting a government agent, fighting these alien monster people called the Dire Wraiths, who are like holdovers from a comic book Marvel was publishing at the time called Rom the Space Knight, if anybody remembers that. So it's a very, very interesting comic. The story, of course, is by Chris Claremont, longtime X-Men writer, and the art is by Barry Windsor Smith. Barry Windsor Smith was at the time mostly known for being the first artist on the Conan Barbarian comic book, and he's done lots of fantasy art, lots of science fiction art. He left comics for a while, or left mainstream comics for a while. Kind of came back with these X-Men comics and started doing Marvel Comics covers and things. And not very long after this, I believe he might have also started doing the Weapon X series, which was the origin of Wolverine in Marvel Presents. And then I do remember they, collected into a trade and so on and so forth, which is actually pretty popular. The artwork is very, 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 very beautiful, very gorgeous. It's really, really nice comic book art. The storytelling, the panel layouts are very clear, very easy to follow. His figures are, very lean. Some subtle shading here and there, clean lines, very crisp. It's just really nice to look at. Barry it's a very interesting departure from the regular X-Men artist at the time, which is John Romita Jr., who John Romita Jr. is still doing Marvel stuff. His characters are very big, kind of blocky, things like that. Like I said, the characters here are all drawn very lean, but it's very, very gorgeous to look at. It's obvious that he um, spent his time, drawing this. He didn't hack it out. The writing is very much a product of its time. First of all, it's Chris Claremont, who is, very wordy and verbose anyway. And then some of the comic kind of suffers from being done in a Silver Age. And what I mean by that is a lot of times people explain themselves a little bit too much. A character walks in a room and says, "My name is so and so. I come from such and such. I'm here to do this, that, and the other thing." And someone else says, "Well, my name is blah blah, and I oppose your such and such because of this, that, and the other thing." And, just over explaining themselves in a very awkward way. But, what do you want? It's from 1984, and this is back in the days when, people weren't doing the decompression thing, and there was this whole idea of every issue is, some person's first issue, so you always have to explain who we are and why we're in this situation. But otherwise, it's a very nice comic. It's a very interesting X-Men comic. It's been reprinted a bunch of times. It's been reprinted in Classic X-Men. I think it's in the Essentials. It might have been reprinted in a few other places. Normally, I would say at this point, I would recommend this comic book to people who like X, Y, and Z. But, it's the X-Men. You already know if you like it or not. One interesting thing, though, I would say about this, this was right at the time when Marvel was publishing a comic book called The New Defenders. And that's where you had some X-Men characters in there. You had, like, the Beast was in it. Angel was in it, and Iceman was in it, plus like some C-level characters from the previous run of the Defenders. And I remember reading an interview with Chris Claremont around this time where he says, like, yeah, I really wanted to kind of have Cyclops go off and do his own thing and, leave all the 70s characters be the star of the comics, but I didn't want to write him out completely because I didn't want him to end up in this other comic book. Of course, what happens right after that interview was published, maybe a year or two later, they bring back X-Factor, which is essentially the X-Men. They bring Jean Grey back from the dead and basically have Cyclops run out on his wife. And we could talk about why that's a good or bad idea and whatever. But anyway, once again, thanks for listening. If you have any X-Men memories to share or Silver Age memories to share, let me know. Thanks, and you have a great one.